see the return in time. Corners, Politano scores! Stoppage time winner for Italy!
Welcome to Club and Country, the post-game show. Italy 1-0 winners. The 94th got the job done. The U.S. held on, and I think I'm being extremely accurate when I say held on throughout this one. Probably the final game of Dave Sarakin's tenure. We don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure. Did I start with a jinx? Was that a little bit of a jinx? I'm so sorry. 3-5-3 in 2018. We'll get your highlights here in just 1 second. I'm joined, of course, by Bobby Warshaw and Matt Doyle. Guys, take your pick. Thoughts on this game, thoughts on 2018, meld them. What are your thoughts?
We should start with the game, and I thought it was emblematic of a lot of 2018. It was playing against a better team, trying to put as many men as we could get on the field behind the ball and hope that they don't batter the door down, and for 90 minutes it worked. I'm not sure we learned much about it. I've been relatively optimistic about the team. Talent anyway, but it's tough to look back on 2018 now and not think, well, we just wasted an entire 12 months. I don't know, Bobby. You able to lift my spirits right now?
Yeah, I want to say one thing, because you and I were in a bad place after that England game.
Yeah.
And we get in the group chat, and guess who's trying to bring us up? Guess who's trying to say, oh, you Debbie Downers, Chicken Littles, this guy is not falling, everything's okay. I present to you Matt Doyle.
So this is a different. No, this is different because you guys were down on the talent. I'm not down on the talent on this team. It's the process right now with the Fed, with the USSF, is frustrating. There is no reason at all there shouldn't have been a permanent manager for these games.
Okay, then sell us on the talent, because what I see is a team that probably loses 2002. Our World Cup team in 2002, probably loses 2006 World Cup team, probably loses 2010, probably loses 2014. So give me the reason that the talent is better.
Because they're all 20 years old and they're not playing in the World Cup until 2022. And you look at Christian Pulisic. Italy only had one answer for Christian Pulisic today. It was to tactically foul him. I think he drew 7 fouls, and 6 of them were on, counterattacking opportunities. And credit to Italy, they've been doing this for 60 years, and they're amazing at it. They're the best tactical fouling team in the world, and they showed it today. Josh Sargent was not great, but he's an 18-year-old who has literally never played a professional game. He didn't look out of his depth. He just wasn't particularly good. We put out a team with 8 defenders, essentially. Marky Delgado was not good enough. Kellen Acosta's not good enough. I don't have any more stock with those two guys. But Tyler Adams was really good. I thought Aaron Long, in his second cap, he was pretty decent. I thought Walker Zimmerman struggled at times, but he wasn't overwhelmed. Ethan Horvath, who's a Champions League goalkeeper, we had a really good game.
Can I cut you off there before we go to the whole team? Let's take a look at some of the work Ethan Horvath did. Here are the highlights. They don't include much from the U.S. That's what happens when you're outpassed by 500, outshot by 14 shots, on target 6-1. Italy had the possession, the U.S. sank deep. What did this game look like to you, Bobby?
I'm not going to talk about this game. There's nothing. I can talk about this game in the bigger picture of what I've seen over the past year, but also from watching a bunch of academy teams this year and watching our U20s and the CONCACAF champions right now. And I would just say top to bottom within American soccer, teams and players need to be braver on the ball. When you watch Italy, when you watch Germany, then when you go to the Nations League and you watch Spain and some of the other top teams in the world, players and teams are braver on the ball. They're willing to take the ball in tough spots. They're willing to give the ball in tough spots. And my biggest takeaway from watching this team over the past year and the U20s is that I would just like to see a culture within our country that is willing to risk the ball more, that is willing to put the ball into tough spots, because only through putting the ball in tough spots, only through taking the ball in tough spots, can you truly get control of the soccer ball and get control of the game. And with the way this sport is moving, if you are unwilling to do that, and this is a little bit of a plea to every youth coach, to every kid out there, the key to us, to me, the biggest variable in us improving.
Look at the camera when you're making a plea.
Sorry, the biggest way for us to improve our game.
Camera. It's the red light of
is to instill this sense of bravery, this sense of confidence on the ball, and also this problem-solving understanding that within a soccer game, if you really want to dictate a game, in order to dictate a game, you have to be able to move the other team around. You've got to be able to get some control over the ball, and the only way to do that is if you're willing to take more risk and be braver in possession. And I just did not see that all in the last year, and that has to be step number one. Whoever comes in, I say, guys, I believe in you. I trust you to give and take the ball in tough spots.
No one does Ernest like you do, Ernest, Bobby. Greg Berhalter would seem to be the kind of coach with the sort of philosophy, with the beliefs, with the bravery that you're talking about. We don't know, frankly, what the timeline is. I won't make any guesses. I'm done with that side of this whole debate. Could Greg Berhalter get that out of this team right now?
I think he could.
Is there a larger issue?
Yeah, I think Greg Berhalter's a really good coach. And as I said on the pregame show, I'm not in love with the process that appears to be pointing towards him being the full-time national team coach, and we're going to have more on that in just a second. But in the end, if he is the guy who is the national team head coach, I think they will play a braver, more compelling type of soccer. Go ahead, Bobby.
No, you're spot on. And what I want to add to that is it's not just about this team. It is about the culture we have within the sport in this country.
Yes.
That we just, in general, aren't good enough at taking the ball in tough spots and being able to maneuver the ball in tough spots. And it's important that we have a guy like Greg Berhalter, someone like him who instills that confidence in his team, not just for what it says about the national team, but to set an example for how we go top down as building our soccer.
I agree, and I will add on to it. One of the things that was missing from this game and has been missing forever, really since 2011 with the U.S. national team, is you're talking about those brave individual moments. Those are worthwhile, but they're worth the most when they happen within a coherent, planned structure. When it's not just individual matchups, it's when those individual matchups happen within a lattice work of structural soundness. So and it happens on both sides of the ball. There were times in the second half, especially where the U.S. was pressing, and it was a 4-1-5, and there was just one guy in central midfield 20 yards away from the front line and 20 yards ahead of the back line, and it was so stretched out. If I was Italian, I would be furious that we only got one goal out of this and never was able to make like really dangerous chances out of those moments, because again, everything with the U.S. has been reactive and individualistic, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it, and it's ridiculous at this point that we don't have a head coach.
I agree with that. I will try to, for our sake, for your sake, take us in a little bit more positive direction.
Oh, Sunshine Wiebe.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying right now. Okay. The pieces that we build around. Give them to me in order of most impactful, who most fit into this sort of bravery that you see, who just are the players that American soccer fans should look at and say, by God, it's been a dark year, but by God, we have this guy. We have this guy. This guy's going to go. Who do you start that list with? Is it Christian Pulisic?
Do you want to go?
It probably is Christian Pulisic, but there's also a sense that in these last 3 games, and there's reasons why he didn't dominate, but he didn't dominate in any of these performances. And yes, you're right, that's a bad thing to say because tactically it wasn't set up for him. He was not put in a position to succeed. But other than that, Andrew, that's the most concerning part about this particular national window is it felt like we had a center-back tandem that we could put on the team sheet every time, and Matt Miazga and Jonathan Brooks, and not anymore. They played their way out of it. It felt like we had a right back that we could build around. DeAndre Yedlin played his way out of it. I don't see really anybody other than Christian Pulisic, even a Weston McKennie, who I really feel we can build around.
I think that's overstating it. Like Brooks and Miazga struggled when they were out there, but I don't think they've played their way out of it. I mean, if anything, guys like Walker Zimmerman, Aaron Long having good performances, maybe they put a little pressure on it. Maybe there are just more options. So I'm not as down on them as you are. I do think that Pulisic, Adams, and McKennie are all A+ prospects and players. I think in terms of front line, it'll be easier to answer 6 months from now. I think 6 months from now, we have 2 starters in the Bundesliga. We have a healthy Josie Altidore, and that's pretty good. I'm not that concerned about it. I think Zach Steffen, even though Ethan Horvath had a really good game today, I think Zach Steffen is a long-term piece, and both those guys are 23 years old. So I'm not. I want there to be more Christian Pulisics, but at this point there aren't. I think that's just part of the process and part of the cycle where we're at.
The answer is that nobody locked in their role going forward except Christian Pulisic. Because the thing about both Greg Berhalter and Peter Vermees and maybe Lopetegui is all these top coaches nowadays have an idea of how they want their system to work. And every player is just a little cog in that system. So the overall talent level and the way that we perceive it isn't nearly as important to these guys that are being listed as potentially coming in. So I don't think anybody's locked in their role.
Give me the job for this next head coach. Be it Berhalter, be it Vermees, be it whoever. What's the job? What do you do first? How do you do it? How do you take this year that has felt like a waste, despite the fact that there were 23 players that got their first caps? I mean, I think that's what you hang on 2018. You say, okay, well, we have new players in the player pool to look at, to choose from, to judge by, and who have experience with this group or at this level. What do you do as a head coach when you walk into this? What's job one?
You know what I want to just start this off with? Peter Vermees had said this in an interview, that you could hire anyone, they could qualify. The fact that we didn't qualify was a total aberration, a total failure of that group. Do you guys agree with that, first of all?
I agree, but a million different things had to go wrong for us to not qualify. It was the worst case scenario time after time after time that led to that day in Cuba.
Okay.
Also, we did hire, quote unquote, anyone, and we didn't qualify. So there was a path to that disaster. I agree, had it been someone consistently throughout, give me Bruce through the whole cycle, I think we qualify. But as you said, it's a terrible, terrible confluence of factors. But what do you do first? Where are you going with that?
Well, I think about it in two different ways, right? If the goal is to qualify, then that is a different question of, are we going to take the sport to the next level? Because if it's just to qualify, then you just build a solid team, you learn how to play in Honduras, you learn how to play in Costa Rica, you learn how to get results to get through the hex, then you see what happens in the World Cup. But it doesn't feel like we want that. That actually nobody just wants to get back to the base. We need a coach who figure out who's going to take us to the next level, which, as I've said on the show many times, needs to be a coach who values possession, who values pressing, who values playing on the front foot. So I actually think it's a larger task than just putting a cohesive team.
I think you make it smaller. In order to take, you have to take the task apart and do it bit by bit and stage by stage. First thing I do, if I was hired as a head coach, is I would make a plan to get to and win the Gold Cup. It's about the next 8 months, getting to June of next year, making sure that you're in the type of form you want. I would say we're playing a 4-2-3-1. It is the default formation. Everyone on the team knows how to play it. There are I think it suits Pulisic pretty well. I think it suits McKennie and Adams pretty well, and I like that as a spine. And you say, I mean, the other thing is, look, if you're not playing for your club team, you're not going to play for the national team. I don't care, Matt Miazga, that you're on the books at Chelsea. If you can't get it, if you can't get on the field in France, then you're not going to play. I don't care how good you are, Josh Sargent. If you can't get on the field for Werder Bremen, you're not going to play for Red, White, and Blue. Start holding people accountable like that. That's how you change the culture, because it's been scattershot since 2011. There has not been any accountability from the top down, and there has to start being that from within the locker room. And I think that the players would respond to that.
All right, let's take a look at what you're saying out there as you watch and process this game. A 1-0 loss for the U.S. They finished the year 3-5-3. Paul Carr, for the first time since 1973-76, the U.S. is winless in 10 straight games outside the United States. Not sure how to take this one. Contextually, it's back and forth for me.
Take it with a little bourbon, man. Let's see,
it is 5:15, so I think that is allowed, unless you're under the age of 21 out there. Michael Dwyer. Honestly, this U.S. national team performance is fine. They've always had to play big games where more talented teams dominate the ball. They get a big goalkeeping performance, and they figure out how to win on grit. They lost that in the last 6 years, and they need to rebuild it. Well, where were the chance creation in that one? The set pieces didn't come from those. On the counter, didn't come from that. I don't know if I agree with that.
I think that's a little bit too sunny, but he's not wrong in the terms of the 1,000-foot down view of it. Like, there are going to be more games like this against the Italys, Englands, Colombias, and Brazils of the world, where we have 30% of the ball at most, and we're just reduced to trying to kill them on set pieces in the counter.
Bobby Boswell, one of the favorites here. Relax, Italy. You didn't make the World Cup either. But they got a head coach, Roberto Mancini. He's a pretty good head coach.
Pretty good head coach.
They got a lot of talent, too. Most of it did not play in this game. This was a B team for Italy, and it was in some ways a B team for the U.S. as well. Josh Gabriel, other than the emergence of Adams, McKennie, Sargent, Weah, players we already kind of knew about. Someone please convince me that the last 12 months or so weren't an absolute waste of time for the U.S. Can you do that? Can you convince Josh Gabriel that they were not a waste of time, Bobby?
They weren't a complete waste of time. I'll start there. They weren't. There was a little. Young players play in hard games against good teams. There's always something to take away. There'll be a game down the line when they're going to remember that moment against Italy when they couldn't figure out how to close out the game. They're going to use that another time. So it was a large percentage waste of time, but not 100%.
Feels like it was more of a collective waste than it was an individual waste. Horvath, balling today. Still see Stephanie as a monster, though. Ethan Horvath, there have been some questions. He'd lost his job with Club Brugge. He's now got it back, and this was a game that he can look back on and point to, kind of like Zach Steffen has had a few times in his national team career here now, and say, hey, I was a difference maker in that game. Don't doubt me.
He's a young keeper who's had a sort of up and down career so far. He was very good for a time in Belgium, and then he got the yips, I guess, and couldn't hold on to the ball and played his way out of that lineup, and we saw some of that with the U.S. national team as well. Over the past couple of months, he's been strong, and he played his way back in for Bruges and had a good game today.
This, I think, is a feeling of a lot of folks out there. I don't have to read this one for you. I think you might feel it in your gut right now. The feeling out period is going to happen when games start to matter. I think that's true, but I think that games do matter now. It may not be in the sense that the result matters, but as you said, Doyle, the process matters to get to the Gold Cup, because the Gold Cup's really not that far away. If we're talking about that next game potentially being January, I'd assume, not announced yet, but we just had one against Costa
I think there
Rica.
are only 2 national team windows between now and the Gold Cup. There's just the February and March windows, if I'm not mistaken.
January camp.
January camp is not
really
a
a
national
window,
team
but
window.
but
it's not
it's
a
still,
FIFA window.
Right.
And like guys like Pulisic, McKennie, probably Adams, Miazga, Brooks, Bobby Wood, Ethan Horvath, they're not going to be there in January. So it does it would have been helpful to have the coach. Would have been helpful to have a real coach.
Do you think if we win Gold Cup, say we beat Mexico in the Gold Cup final, do you think the vitriol remains, or people just forget about these 12 months?
It depends on how we play. If the U.S. beats Mexico in the Gold Cup final and plays pretty well doing it, I think people will forgive USSF the past 12 months. But I don't think that, in retrospect, would justify it. I think that this is still a bit of an opportunity wasted. It hopefully won't be fatal. I don't think it should be. But this is too long now. It's 13. Yeah. It's 13 months.
People are looking for any sort of traction, whether that be the head coach, whether that be a semblance on the field of connectedness, whether that be the performance, the result, whatever. People are looking for some sort of traction. And I think a lot of people have lost patience with waiting.
I just wonder, in my head, I just try and figure out how much does the coach being here for 3-4 days at a time and then 2 games matter, compared to us just being upset that we don't get the experience of watching a national team we enjoy. Like how much it really matters versus just our visceral reaction to being frustrated.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the balance that has to be had here. But I think one of those scenarios you don't get to know. You don't know what it would be like if the coach is there. You don't know if there's expectations, like Matt said, laid down for everybody that now lasts through this winter break as all these guys are playing. You don't know whether that culture starts to coalesce in this camp, because the beginnings are just as important as the middles in a lot of ways. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that. We have one more little bit of information to pass along to you. If you watched the FS1 broadcast, Grant Wall at the end, reporting that the former Real Madrid, Spain, Spanish U20 coach that we all saw have a little moment here. Decision-making maybe not his strong suit. He says he expressed interest, and U.S. Soccer said, no, this is also an agent probably floating some stuff through, but this is a name that should be considered if you were starting the process from scratch. Well, that's at least considered.
That's the word, right? The report from Grant Wall was that they felt that the ball was too far down the road on their process in terms of hiring a national team head coach, because they couldn't really consider Lopetegui, which is, I don't think Lopetegui's the greatest coach in the world. He's struggled with both Porto and Real Madrid very briefly, but he was really good with Spain. They were unbeaten in 20 games with him. He won the U21 and U19 Euros, and granted, it's with Spain. He has a lot of talent playing with those teams, but it's not like they were playing nobody. So If this is true, and it's Grant Wall, who's reported a lot throughout the years, and we know he's credible and he knows his sources really well, so I'm assuming it is true, this is frustrating. This is bad when it comes to process.
It's only frustrating if they don't have the guy, right? So they better have the guy. Let's point that out. If they already have a deal done with Greg Berhalter or Peter Vermees or somebody, then it's fine, then it's whatever, the deal is done. But if they don't have that deal and Greg Berhalter decides to go to the Galaxy, or Peter Vermees decides he'd rather stay at SKC, or whoever turns down this job and they said no to all these people right away, that'd be bad.
Hey, this is the last club and country of 2018. Thank you so much for hanging with us before and after U.S. national team games. We're going to keep doing it next year. We assume we will do so under the context of a new head coach.
We won't have any more new head coach.
No, it's done. It's done. Wash your hands of it.
We'll see.
1-0, Italy winners on this Tuesday. Go enjoy your holidays, everybody. But remember, Sunday, Audi 2018 MLS Cup playoffs are back. Doubleheader on ESPN and FS1 starting at 5 p.m. with Atlanta and New York. By the way, Almiron and Joseph Martinez played 90 and 73 minutes today. Kaku played 45. 90 for Long. 90
for Adams.
It all leads to one thing. Playoffs, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy your day.